You're listening to If Only I Were Wiser podcast, where I, Raina Wilson, your host, will bring together wisdom and raw life stories to provide encouragement and insight. So many times life becomes messy and overwhelming to sift through all the data, research, and influencer must-haves in order to really be the healthiest version of you. If you're looking to learn, grow, and listen to other people's stories in their own wellness journey, then keep listening, because there might just be some wisdom for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. On today's episode, I have fellow wellness mama Arianna Tucker. Arianna is a wife and mom of two precious little babes, passionate about healthy living with a balance and seeking the Lord first in all things. She is also a singer-songwriter and moving into the gifting that the Lord has placed on her life since leaving the crunchy community. In this episode, we chat about all things motherhood and what it has really looked like for her to transition out of the crunchy, holistic culture because of the toxicity that can exist there. I'm so thankful for Arianna's vulnerability and transparency and what it has looked like to get some backlash, especially on social media, and just hear her heart for where she wants to go and the Lord is leading her. So let's dive in. Hello, Arianna. Welcome to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast.
Hello.
I'm really excited just to dive into your story and just hear where your heart has been on this crunchy journey. I use air quotes, listeners. But before we kind of dive into the content, I would love to just hear what is one place of your life right now that is really bringing you peace?
That's funny that we're talking about this topic because I feel like that's really where the Lord has been trying to bring peace in my life, is this aspect of healthy living and just really releasing control in areas that I can't control. There's been a lot of things happen in the past year just within my family's health life that I couldn't control, and I had to really release control to the Lord. And he's been teaching me a lot through that and just kind of deconstructing my view of holistic, crunchy living and really seeing what that looks like as a Christian and just balancing that. So yeah, I feel like that's where the Lord is really bringing me peace. And he's also really bringing me peace and just the seemingly mundane moments of motherhood. I feel like social media makes you feel like you have to do all these other things outside of motherhood. And there's definitely a time and a season for different things the Lord wants you to pursue. But God has really just been giving me so much peace and just enjoying every moment with my kids. And so, yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I am super excited to dive into that. But before we do, I would love to just hear about your family. What does your family look like? What are regular rhythms for you right now look like?
Yes. So I have two kids. One is 3, just turned 3 actually, which is so crazy to say. And then I have a little baby. He's 3 months old, almost. I think tomorrow. Yeah. No, today. He's 3 months old today.
Wow.
My dates are all thrown off.
Yeah.
But right now we are just kind of honestly still adjusting to 2, and I feel like the last couple of weeks I've kind of figured out what a routine would look like for us. Really trying to do less screen time with my 2-year-old, which has been interesting, but it's also showed me what it's going to look like once we start implementing homeschool and stuff. So basically our rhythm looks like a lot of play, whether it's together or him independently, and then obviously lots of nursing. 3-month-old, and then just finding what it looks like to balance just home stuff and taking care of kids. I wouldn't say that we have a specific rhythm at the moment. Just kind of take each day as it comes. So yeah, that's kind of what my life looks like at the moment.
Yeah, which is so crazy. I was talking to some friends the other day. I don't even remember my son being so little, which is just so sweet to see your son. Because it's man, I went, I think 42 and 3, and he was just a big old boy. Babies don't keep, and nobody told me that.
They don't. They don't. I mean, he's 3 months old and I'm like, "What happened?"
Right.
Like, I feel like that flew by so fast.
For sure.
So, yeah, it makes me sad. It's definitely bittersweet.
Oh, for sure. I would love to just start off by hearing, like, how did you enter this wellness sphere? What did it look like for you guys to get started, for your family, or for you personally?
Yeah, so actually, gosh, it was like I want to say it's when my husband and I first got married. I joined Young Living as a newlywed who was a stay-at-home newlywed. I mean, I did photography, but since when I first got married, I moved out of state to where my husband, is from, and so
Mm-hmm.
um, I was doing photography, wedding, and like portrait photography, but I was like, I feel like I need to bring other income, and my friend was doing Young Living, so I kind of joined up on it, and it just kind of opened my eyes a little bit to the wellness space. Sorry, so
Mm-hmm.
and I realized between doing Young Living and Beauty Counter and just like a bunch of non toxic companies, I loved like their mission, but I realized that like network marketing or MLMs weren't for me. But I'm really thankful for them because they
Yeah.
did like open my eyes to a lot of things that I was not aware of. Like before that, I just really wouldn't look at ingredients. I didn't really buy organic. Like I didn't really care, or
Mm-hmm.
not that I didn't care. I just was kind of ignorant to it all. um, and then from that, I left MLM, like the MLMs I was a part of. I did like three, which was crazy. But then, third time's the charm. I kind of realized it was not for me.
Yeah.
But I still stuck to the whole clean living thing. And so that's kind of how I entered into it. I would say, as far as like, I guess it's called like the pro metabolic eating, like all of that labels,
Mm-hmm.
like probably within the last like year and a half, after I had my first son, I dealt with some hormonal issues. And I didn't know why.
Okay.
And I ended up working with a nutritional therapist to run some tests, see what was going on, adjust my health. I learned so many different things that I could implement. And so I kind of started sharing my journey because I was wondering why I was dealing with so much postpartum anxiety, postpartum slump. And I was like, okay, I cannot be the only one who's dealt with this. But now, like, after, being on a protocol for a couple months, I feel so much better. And I feel like so many women, like, don't really know how to go in the direction of, like, fixing, like, those type of things, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to your doctors, they're just like, here's some, anxiety medication and stuff. And not, there's definitely a time and a
Yeah.
place, but I think a lot of nourishment and balancing of minerals and things like that play a huge part. At least it did for me. Um, so I started sharing my journey, and I loved it because I was able to recommend people to the person I was working with and just really encourage other moms. But it kind of went down this downhill spiral for me because there was a lot of people looking to me
Mm.
for answers, and I was like, I don't know, like, I'm not like, I never went to school for this. I was just sharing this to simply like encourage other people. um but then all of a sudden, like, I would post something like, oat milk, or just things that are, I guess, controversial in that sphere, and
Sure.
people would be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I thought you couldn't consume oat milk, only raw milk." And, people would just go on these tangents. Everything I posted, I swear I would get a DM like of somebody like
Mm.
trying to oppose it, or, "Oh, you shouldn't use that product because it has this in it." And it got to the point where I was like, "Okay, like literally everything is toxic to people. Like this is way too much."
Yeah.
Um and I also realized that I was in my personal life having the same mindset and like kind of fearful of different things. And um, when my husband last year started having like side pain. At first, my first thought was, oh, this is probably appendicitis. And so I went onto like this Crunchy Moms group and was like asking these ladies like what they thought about this, and they were like, whatever you do, don't like have him get surgery. And so it like put this thought in my head like, oh shoot, like maybe we need to like try to fix this naturally. And then within a couple of days he was in severe pain, and I was like telling him like, you need to go to the doctors. He's like, no, it's fine, I'll be fine. And I was like, no, like you
Okay.
need to go. So the
Right.
next day we went to the emergency room, and sure enough, he had to have emergency surgery. And if we would have waited any longer, he would have had to like basically have like a colostomy bag for like the rest of his life. Like it was a hot mess. And
Wow.
it really made me realize like, okay,
Yeah.
yes, clean, organic, like living and stewarding our body is great, but there's also a time and a place. And we also have to trust the Lord with modern medicine when it is, needed. But also it made me realize that like we cannot just like trust anybody on the internet to give us advice.
Mm.
And we really have to partner with the Lord and the Holy Spirit and just like guiding us and leading us when it comes to especially, those bigger issues like my husband having surgery. So yeah, that's kind of what, you know, that's how my journey started, but then it's how like I've kind of figured out like balance with the Lord and what that looks like. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Which is so crazy because like the other day we planned our meals for this week, planned them from cookbooks of holistic and nourishment focused like food creators. And then I like started to panic because I was like building our list. I was like, if we buy everything that we need for these recipes this week, like we are going to go way over our food budget. And I started to think about like, uh-oh, like I should not have anxiety with the fact that I have to go pick up conventional beef for us to
mm-hmm.
eat this week. It's a gentle reminder to see how the Lord is starting to reveal that in my heart. So I'm like super thankful for that. But it's also crazy to see that like I've come this far in this like dogmatic and like black and white, crunchy, clean lifestyle that it can be, and if not is just more toxic than if I was, full products, full, synthetic materials, spraying perfume, which I have done in other seasons of my life,
Yeah.
um so it's just crazy to think about like this in the transition from not clean to clean. It doesn't mean it's going from unhealthy to healthy if you're sacrificing your mental, emotional, or spiritual well-being.
Yep. Agreed.
So where did you feel like, or maybe was it in this conversation or experience you had with your husband, did you feel like this shift actually started for you to look a little bit more toxic?
Yeah, so that really, first of all, that opened my eyes to just modern medicine because not only was I like non toxic, but I was like super just like bitter towards modern
Mm,
medicine. Which now I realize, like, obviously, the Lord has really gifted people with knowledge to be in that sphere. Not to say that there isn't anything that's corrupt, but there is corruption on the clean and non-toxic side just as much as there is corruption on, um, the conventional side. And so, um, that really started to open my eyes to that. And then I feel like the Lord just really, the last year has been using it in so many different areas of my life. But the next thing has been my 3-year-old has dealt with eczema
mhm,
ever since we stopped breastfeeding. And like, there's like this whole movement of like, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like German New Medicine, and they're talking about how you need to like heal your inner child and heal all your
mhm,
traumas and all this stuff. And so it got me thinking like, oh my gosh, like is my kid suffering from eczema because I like stopped breastfeeding
mm,
him and that was really hard for him? Like, is it my
yeah,
fault? Like I like really started to get down on myself, and I was like, well, if you're supposed to heal that, like, how do I even, like, do that? My son's 3 years old, like, he doesn't understand any of this, and it just
Right.
really got me in this, like, anxiety, like, state because I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is why he has eczema." So I stopped breastfeeding. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then, like, it wasn't but, like, a few weeks ago, I think he got into some, like, I think it was our treated wood. We're putting up a fence in our backyard, and
Mm-hmm.
he was like climbing up on it. And you just don't even think anything about your kid climbing on wood. And then the next morning, he had a huge rash from head to toe. And I was like, oh no. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know what it was at first. And so I didn't really know what was going on. I was really worried that his tongue was starting to swell because I was like, what if it's his throat next? So we took him to an urgent care and they gave him some steroids and we had to give him Benadryl and everything. And I really had to release a lot of control of that. Like, I know like side effects of steroids, I know side effects of Benadryl, but I was like, dude, like I'm not gonna try anything natural because what if his throat just like closes up? I like know that this will probably help bring everything down, you know. So I had to release control with that. And then I also had to release control with my home birth that I thought was going to be like perfect. But after I had my son, we had to transfer him to the hospital for extra oxygen support. So just different things like that. Like the Lord's really showing me, like, are you like fully trusting me? Like, or are you trying to trust like the country people on the internet and only them, you know? So that's been really, really hard. Really, really pruning.
So, if you could share a little bit more about your home birth, I'm curious as to like what was that like? Or at least for me, I know preparing for birth, I read all the books, I followed all the people, I read all the things. Like you said, like it's this level of preparation. The consequences of medicine. Like you're all in at some point in this holistic space. So when it came to my son's birth, I thought I did all the things right. He wasn't, like we weren't progressing. We ended up, I wouldn't say we weren't tricked to stay, but like our midwife that followed us through induction wasn't completely transparent when we were being induced. Like I went longer than I thought, that everybody would say. So even I felt like I was doing everything the crunchy way. And then I had a C-section and I was on Pitocin multiple times and I had group B strep. So I had 2 or 3 days of antibiotics because we were in the hospital for 5 days waiting for my son to come out. But I say all that because I remember diving into the German new medicine because my son was just like comfortable in there, and I don't think he wanted to come out. But I almost like beat myself up because while I was going through a lot of emotional and traumatic baggage during that my pregnancy and delivery season in particular, similar to you, like I almost like I carried the shame of thinking, oh, well, if I had just been emotionally healthy, available, dealt with my crap, then my son would have come out, you know? So I just love to hear like your perspective and what that mental shift has been like to surrender that over to the Lord.
Yeah, so everything went well with my birth. I started contracting at 4:30 in the morning. And by 7, my water had broke, and I progressed pretty fast. And I only pushed for like a few minutes, and he was out.
Oh, wow.
And so
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like thank you, Lord, like for this quick labor. That I feel like the Lord really just like gave me strength for. And it was funny because like during the labor, I kept quoting scripture of like, I will fear no evil, like the Lord is my strength. And
Mm,
like the Holy Spirit was giving me that verse like throughout the whole labor. And I was like, I'm not fearing anything. Like, why am I getting this
yeah.
verse? But then the Lord knew He was preparing my heart because literally when my son came out, like his heart was beating, but he was unconscious. And
Oh my gosh.
they had to give him mouth to mouth resuscitation. and oxygen and all the things. And it took like a minute for him to cry.
Wow.
And it was so scary. And I like was like there, but I wasn't. Like it was just
Right.
very like, I don't even know how to describe, just very
Yeah.
like, I don't know, like out of body experience. Cause it's like you just had like you have like all these like endorphins because you just like birth your child, but then your child is also not breathing. So it's like you're on this high, but you're also like on this really low and like I did not know how to feel.
Yeah, trying to reconcile the two.
Yeah. And then he was finally breathing, finally cried, but his oxygen levels weren't where they wanted him. I was also positive for group B strep before I gave birth, and I denied antibiotics because I like saw the statistics and I was like, it's not worth it to me to be
Mhm.
on them during my birth. So they wanted to transfer him just to make sure that he didn't have any group B strep because that was like the one of the symptoms of group B strep is like struggling to breathe
Okay.
and stuff. So
Yeah.
he got transferred and was on antibiotics for a few days. Come to find out his test comes back negative. So I was like a little
Negative.
salty because I was like, he literally just was on antibiotics. And I really had to give it to the Lord, like, Lord, like, please, like, protect his gut during these antibiotics. Cause, I knew for sure it'd probably come back negative because
Mhm.
just because of the statistics. But I really had to give it to the Lord because when we transferred him, like that was hospital policy. I didn't really know what else to do. They also thought I was
Right.
crazy just because of all the stuff we deny. So I was like, if
Mm.
I deny another
Right.
thing, they're gonna like report me to CPS or something.
CPS, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I just had to surrender a lot of that to the Lord. It was really hard, especially because I was able to stay at the hospital, but they put me on this room on the like way other side of the hall. It was like the longest walk ever. So I like didn't even get to
Mm.
recover until we got home from the hospital
Yeah.
like 3 days later. Because I was
Wow.
walking back and forth visiting my son. I couldn't even nurse him till
Right.
day 3, and it
Mm.
was horrible. It was really really hard, and it was
Yeah.
definitely a moment where I had to surrender or else I would go crazy. There was no other choice but surrender. And so through all of those experiences with my husband and both of my sons, I feel like the Lord has really showed me like, hey, like in this life, like this is a fallen world. Like you are going to experience these trials, and especially with our health. Like, when are you going to trust me? When are you going to
Mhm.
surrender that to me? And that doesn't mean that we like live our lives carelessly and like just eat junk food all the time, but it does mean like if we can't afford certain things this month, like we're going to have to just stop buying it. Like right now, we're paying for my
Right.
son's insurance, and like we're paying for insurances, we're paying medical bills until our insurance pays us back. Like, and I can't like afford to do supplements this month. So we're skipping out on it and it's going to be okay. So it's just,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's really where the Lord has showed me like surrender. And then also, like, I found myself, I was off social media for a month before I had Oliver. And I
Okay.
came back and I immediately had so much anxiety just because of all of the health accounts that were like, do this, don't do
Mm.
that. This is bad. This is toxic. And it was like, okay, like what can we do? And the things that we can do are so expensive. And, I, I something had to give. And so I really just like cut out a lot of noise and followed a lot of holistic creators I had followed for forever. And that doesn't mean that their information that they share is bad, but it
Mhm.
is to say that like you do need to protect your mind too when it comes to that. um just because it can become overwhelming, and then these creators that talk about, oh, it's like a balance, doesn't seem like a balance. You know what I mean? um because it
Yeah.
seems like, on their social media all they share is like their perfect meals that they do, or like their perfect supplement lineup, and you never see the like junk food or the things you had to sacrifice on for that month. And you don't really see a lot of creators sharing
Mm.
that other side, because we all know that not all of them eat perfectly. Like there's no way unless they have so much money.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I think you shared that perfectly. And I'm definitely very passionate about the financial component of wellness. Like I share that Shauna Holman from A Little Less Toxic, like she
Yes.
is one of the women that I love and adore, like her approach and her story.
I love her too.
But that was like one of the things we talked about was like the point of being a little less toxic is a little at a time.
Yeah.
Because there are like, while I don't necessarily agree with all of German new medicine, where it pushes me towards shame
Right.
and guilt, because shame and guilt are different from
Yeah.
conviction. Shame and guilt come from the enemy, conviction comes from the Lord. And so that was just even a big part of our conversation because like literally yesterday I had to go get groceries. We went to natural we don't even have access in our area that we live in to like a Whole Foods.
Same.
So the closest natural store is Natural Grocers, almost 35 minutes away.
Yeah.
So like we made the drive because we were also going to pick up raw milk, which is the first time we picked up raw milk in 3 months because budget.
Yeah.
So like, we only bought like half of our groceries at Natural Grocers, where I was like, cool, we can add in some of these things because that would be great. But I also have to go to HEB tomorrow and I'm going to buy like conventional meat
Yeah.
because or else we're not going to eat.
Yeah.
But I think you hit the nail on the head. Like it's not sexy to share that on social media,
No.
which really bothers me. And I, at least in my own heart and my own platform, try to share that openly and vulnerably,
Yeah.
because I think that is what can be so toxic to the following and the platform for a lot of these followers and viewers that are coming into this space for the first time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I've shared a few posts on how I feel about this, and they mostly get met with like agreeance, like, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And it's been really interesting to see that there's like this whole other side of people that are like, we have to like save ourselves. Like, we have to, not only steward our bodies, but also our planet. And it's like they believe like these lies that we have to, like, in order for God to save us, that we have to save ourselves. And I'm like, imagine living in a world where you think that like you have control over your like whole being and that you have control over what happens to you physically. Like, to an extent, obviously, like, we have to steward our bodies. I mean, scripture talks about that. But you could be like the healthiest person and eat so clean and still end up with like cancer or
Yes.
a disease that takes you out. Like, we are not promised tomorrow. And so it's really interesting to me that there are like a group of people that actually believe like we have to save ourselves. And it's just so interesting. I feel like when you're on the internet, opens a whole new can of worms of like different groups of people that believe different things. And I'm like, it's really sad to me that people think that, we have to put all of the pressure on ourselves when, we can partner with the Lord in our requests. And how, like, lately I've been praying with my son who struggles with eczema. We're doing a couple of things with his health to try to help it. But ultimately, like, I feel like prayer and him praying, like, he's like praying like every day, like, look, the Lord is healing my skin. Like, he sees like when his skin gets better, he like gives
Wow.
credit to the Lord. And so that's what I want. I
Yeah.
want my kids to grow up, and if they're sick or dealing with something like that, like, and they see that it gets better, or they see like the Lord is helping them through something, I want them to give credit to God. I don't want them to give credit to themselves or to some, person on the internet. Like, ultimately, when we receive healing, it's because God is gracious enough to give it to us. So yeah, I'm with you there.
For sure. So because I feel like we've already touched on this a little bit, as a believer, do you think that they can come in to this space and steward it well? Or do you feel like it's really hard for believers to engage in this space without being influenced by the overwhelm or the,
Yeah.
I think, savior complex? Because if that's the
Right.
case, then there was no need for Jesus. So I agree with you with that.
Yeah. I think that if I could go back and do it over, I would have followed accounts that align biblically with like what I believe, because I think like
Okay.
there's a lot of well-meaning people in the holistic space, but they're either not Christian or they are in kind of like a new age sphere where they like again think that they can heal themselves or think that they can partner with nature to
Mm,
heal themselves or you know heal their inner child and it'll heal themselves like ultimately like
yeah.
any past trauma and any past thing that we've dealt with, the Lord is the one who heals us from all of that and we can't heal ourselves. And so I think the word of God like is so healing. And so I think if I could go back, I would have followed people that were more like aligned with what I believe, but also like one thing at a time, just like a little less toxic on her account. Like, if you're out of your toothpaste, if you can afford a non toxic one, then switch it, just one little thing at a time. You don't have to like dump it all out
Yes.
because you feel like you're going to like die tomorrow if you use these products. One thing at a time. And then also like look at your budget. Like, can you actually afford to, get all organic groceries? Like, I don't think there's been one organic or one grocery run where I've had everything organic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's just no way. It would be so expensive. And so, like, can you afford it? Because if not, like, that's already not living your life pleasing to the Lord because you're not stewarding your finances well and you're trusting, you know, organic food more than you are the Lord,
Hmm.
and now you have no money, um so I really think it's just, can you afford it? How does this make you feel? Is this stressing you out? Are you doing this out of shame, or are you doing this out of genuine like concern, or are you trusting the Lord in this? And so for like even for me like the last month or so, like since being postpartum, I've not felt the best and I'm like, what's going on? So
Yeah.
I actually cut out most of my supplements and
Hmm.
have just been focusing just on food and just kind of seeing if there's something I was blindly supplementing. Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes too, when you're following all these influencers, it's like they all like recommend these supplements and like you think like, oh, if they're recommending it, then I need it.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're like taking 10 supplements and you're like, okay, what is this even for?
Hmm.
Like, why am I even buying this? Uh,
Yeah.
and do I even need this? Like, is my diet covering this? And is this giving me too much of something? Like, so I have even just like cut a lot of things out. So I think just one thing at a time, one switch at a time if you want.
Hmm.
But also just remembering not to live in fear because I think there's a lot of fear mongering out there. And if it causes you to fear, then it's not of God.
Definitely. Which is so funny because in a kind of different realm, but I think it's still applicable. I was using like a holistic skincare company that I really loved for a while. And for whatever reason, again, like our family is navigating mold right now. And that's a whole other topic. But like my skin was reacting very poorly. Like I like just almost like painful to the point where I like had told my husband the other night, like, I do not feel pretty, but also like there's something else wrong. So I went to go see my friend that we actually did one of the first episodes together, who is a holistic skin specialist, esthetician. So she's been with me the past 2 years. She's a close friend, she's a believer. And I went to go see her yesterday, the day before, and we were revisiting my skincare routine. And she was just like, Raina, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I've used this stuff for a while because it's holistic, it's natural, it's the plant stuff.
Hmm.
And I loved it for a
Yeah.
season. And she was like, okay, you need to like stop using that because it is destroying your skin barrier. And she was like, it may have been good for a season, but now it is ruining your skin. So, like, financially, we had the means, thankfully, for me to go get the lab, focus like actual products that my skin needs right now. Because sometimes the holistic, crunchy stuff doesn't work. Like, exactly like you said, like supplementation, it
Yep.
may even be good for a season. You may feel good for a season, and then your body starts reacting. It's like, hold
Hmm.
on, like this is not good for you. And if anything, it's hindering you. But if I were to post that on social media, that hey, I stopped using this big natural focused company, which
Mm-hmm.
I do like and I have used them,
Yep.
but my esthetician that knows me, knows my body, and sits at my wisdom table tells me that I shouldn't be using an acne serum. I'm going to trust her and make that shift without the fear of shame.
Right. I agree. And then, like, it's funny that you say that because towards the end of my pregnancy, I had some iron labs done because I was like
Mm-hmm.
literally so exhausted. My iron levels and hemoglobin were so off. Like, they were like, your numbers need to be a lot better if you're going to have a home birth. And so I actually ended up having to supplement with an iron supplement. And if I mentioned that on Instagram, the, like everyone's like, well, just take beef liver, do this. And I'm like, I was doing that. I was doing all of
Mm.
the things that help you with your iron, and I still was not getting enough. Sure enough, took the iron supplements and my levels were better within 2 weeks. So, like, sometimes you just have to do like what works best for your body, and a lot of times it might not be the holistic crunchy thing.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about what this balance looks like for your family right now? Like you said, you mentioned stepping away from supplementation.
What this balance looks like for my family. So first we focus on before we focus on like anything else, we focus on just like whole foods. Before I get like any packaged stuff, like, because you know how you can like get your Whole Foods, right? And like it's organic and it's not too much like a difference in price, but then you start going for like all the packaged snacks and all the organic juices and all of that stuff. So I have a budget that I have to meet like every week. For our groceries. And so I focus first on like our whole foods, like meat and fruit and stuff like that. And then if we can afford packaged snacks, great. If not, we're just gonna have to do it with like produce and cheese or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
as far as supplements go, like I said, I really just like for right now, I'm taking a break on them. I might be
Mm-hmm.
getting an HTMA done soon just to kind of see like where everything is. Just because I've been feeling like sluggish and bloated beyond belief recently. And I'm like, there's something off, but I don't want to like try to figure it out myself because I feel like if I do that, I do more harm than good most times. So I've been cutting out the supplements for now, just like focusing on food. And then as far as clean living goes, I mean, I even switched from a couple makeup products that aren't like 100% organic, like my blush and bronzer and my mascara, because I just wanted something different. And then also my hair care. My scalp was literally so dry
Yeah.
postpartum. I used to do the apple cider vinegar no poo method, and it worked great for me for a season. And then I had Oliver, and my hair was greasy all of the time. And when you're postpartum, you already feel bad sometimes. And I'm like, I want my hair to feel clean. All right. So I
Yes.
actually got a hair care line that is not organic. They're cleaner, but they're definitely not 100% organic. And my hair is a lot better. And so I'm like, well, that's what I'm going to do. And it's cheaper than what
Yeah.
I normally would do, anyways. So easier to deal with than trying to do the whole apple cider vinegar method. It's just not for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel like, I don't know, when you see online, you see all like the air purifiers and red lights, and you see all the uh, EMF block devices. Like, oh my gosh, people could spend literally thousands of dollars if they wanted to. And so when it comes to that stuff, I like, if I'm interested in something like that a holistic, person's talking about, I look
Mm-hmm.
at it and I'm like, do I need this? Like, do I absolutely need this? If not, I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
feel like you can become a hoarder almost with the whole like at one point my supplement cabinet was so big and I was like, I don't
Yes.
even take a lot of this stuff. Like, why is this in here?
Which I think segues perfectly into, we've touched a little bit on social media, but I think social media makes this area super gray for believers. And so, like you mentioned, maybe it is starting out with like an audit of like, who are you following? What are you consuming?
Yeah.
But I'm also curious, outside of that encouragement, in navigating this space is, did you see like a backlash or like your own personal following change when you like stepped away from this crunchy label?
Yes. Oh my gosh. When I started talking about just like my thoughts on just like the country sphere and just all of that, I didn't really get too much backlash in the comments, but my following definitely changed. A lot of people followed me just for the country sphere and all of that stuff. And it was a year ago that the Lord,
Okay.
so this is like segue into something else because it'll come full circle, but um so I, ever since I was a little girl, have been super passionate about worship and music, and I wanted to go to school for it after high school, but my parents really wanted me to just go to college to get a normal job and stuff like that. So this time last year, I was just like sitting in my guest bedroom. In that moment, the Lord helped me write my song, Beauty from Ashes, which is basically like my testimony song. And I was like literally so scared to share it because, like, in that time, I was like basically sharing holistic, clean living stuff on my Instagram. But I knew the Lord was like, you're going to have to shift from that because this isn't taking you anywhere for me. Like, this is just like you sharing, but like it's not doing anything for me, you know? And um, so I wrote that song, I released it, and with that I lost a lot of people, but I also gained a lot of new like-minded people. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing at all. But then when I started sharing less holistic stuff, more of what the Lord wanted me to share,
Yeah.
and especially when I would talk about the country community and where I was at now, I lost a lot of people because people weren't there for me. They were, and like me as a
Mm-hmm.
person, they were just there for what I had to share, which honestly became like an identity crisis. I was like, what is this? I was like, people literally like defined me as like this holistic girl. And like now, I don't even know what I can share. And I felt really weird because I was like, I felt really weird just like all of a sudden sharing like this other stuff because it wasn't a part of my page.
Right.
I am still kind of navigating that. I've slowly been like, I haven't really shared a lot of holistic stuff recently. Um, but I know the Lord every single time I'm in prayer has been trying to lead me more to share more music and stuff. So I'm currently navigating that season. And really just like stripping, I feel like the Lord is just stripping the box that I would kind of put myself in and the others put me in,
Mm-hmm.
which is not easy. I feel like it would be like if, because this is obviously your passion, like, you know, healthy living with a balance. And all of a sudden, if you like one day like had to like shift to something else, it would be really hard, right? So like that's where I'm at. I'm just kind of navigating that, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I know this is what the Lord wants me to do. I feel like if you have something that you've been passionate about for a really long time and the Lord like continuously brings you back to something, I feel like it's one of those things that he's like, "All right, like come on. Like you're distracting yourself with all these other things and this isn't even where I want you, you know?" So,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at with that, and you know, I've definitely lost some people, but I've also gained like a lot of people um that are supposed to be there, you know, that, and that's kind of my perspective now. Like if I'm sharing, like it's for an audience of one, and that's the Lord. And if it blesses at least one person, like the whoever the Lord like wants to see it, that's just kind of my mindset now. Cause like it doesn't need to have all the likes and shares, and who cares if the algorithm seems like it's messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Like God is bigger than the algorithm, and so like share what you
Yeah.
feel like the Lord is putting on your heart to share. And you know, whoever leaves wasn't supposed to be there, and then whoever comes is maybe supposed to be there for a time. So it's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
how my mindset has shifted on all that, because I think social media can be a place where we get caught up on the likes and the follows and the everything. So yeah.
Oh, yes, which is definitely a place where I'm still processing with the Lord. Like, and it's just been really sweet to see the Lord recently even in the past week, like I had sent out emails from last November because this podcast has definitely been a passion project that I think I had asked the Lord for years and years ago, and he finally was like, okay, now walk in it.
Yeah.
And like you said, that's super scary because there's imposter syndrome, there's the lies, like the devil's really good at speaking all of those things that you tell yourself that don't align with scripture.
Yep.
But even this past week, I had people say yes to interviews that I had kind of just like discounted because I hadn't heard from them in a little bit. And when the day before I was praying, like, Lord, like, help me not to have my identity on the yes to these interviews, but like help me build my identity in you. And then out of his kindness, he still gave me yeses, you know?
Yeah, that's so good.
So that's definitely a place that I am every day. Lord, like, help me not look at the vanity metrics. Help me, like, trust that somebody is going to hear these episodes that need to hear it. And it's not about blowing up and getting big and having thousands of followers.
Yeah.
So that's definitely been a hard place to grow and learn.
Yeah.
When, like you said, like, you're creating a niche-ish sphere of content, and then the Lord is like, JK, like, this is how you'll use your voice now.
Yes. Yeah. And it's really hard too because and I used to follow like these Instagram growth accounts and stuff, and I don't even follow one anymore, but like I just remember being in this place of like, oh, the algorithm. Oh, I'm so mad. The algorithm. I'm like, no, maybe like the Lord just wants to humble me. Like maybe it's not all about, you know, the followers and the likes and what gets shared, you know, maybe it's about sharing in obedience and letting the Lord do the rest, you know. So, yeah, I feel you on that. It's really hard.
Yeah, I mentioned it on another episode maybe, but I had a really candid conversation when this whole project first started, and I was just like, look, I want the metrics. I want the people to like me. And I had like a raw, you know, and vulnerable conversation with her and was like, I want to be seen. I want to be known. I want to be valued. And I knew that the Lord was saying, Raina, you have all of those things in me, first of all.
Oh, I just got chills.
Yeah. But my friend's response to the social media growth component was, but what if it's God's hand of protection that you're not growing the way that you think that you should? And I had ever since then, and that was like several months ago, like I have to come back and remind myself of that, of like, maybe there's a reason why my heart can't handle, you know, and that's my own flesh, that's my own brokenness, to think like maybe I can't handle hundreds of thousands of people following me. Like I can barely, like, I'm in a season where I steward to my son and my husband. You know,
I feel you. I don't think, I honestly in this season do not think that I could handle that. Like, I don't get hate as often as I used to. I used to share a lot of like bold things in the holistic community, and I would get like some heat, and it was like I could not handle it. But it was like getting heat for what? You know, it wasn't about the gospel. It wasn't about the like Jesus. And so I realize now that like didn't even matter. Like the backlash that I got, but like I was so focused on like my feelings that got hurt. But I was like, in the grand scheme of things, like there's people literally being persecuted all over the world for their faith. So anyways, so yeah, I feel you with like the whole like, I think that's really cool what your friend said. Like maybe like the Lord only gives you like what you can handle when it comes to that. And I think that's so true because I don't think I could navigate that. It's a lot.
And it said, truth by a friend is so much kinder, you know?
Yes, for sure.
And she was just like, because Raina, I really think you couldn't handle it. Like, I know your heart and I know you, and I don't think this would be good for you right now. So super humbling to be in that space with the Lord and my community right now. But I would love, if you're open to it, as this episode comes out, and just sharing, if you'd like our community to connect with you, if you'd like for them to follow along with your music story, I would love just to plug that and where a community can find you.
You can just find me at by Arianna Tucker on Instagram or TikTok. TikTok's super chill for me. I just kind of like post my favorite recipes. Like I'm not trying to like do really much on TikTok. It's just like it's a platform where I feel like I can just kind of like share what I love. It's not even like anything like structured. But Instagram is where I share a lot of like lyrics and my writings, my thoughts, the occasional drink recipe.
Love that.
Yeah, they're keeping me going with breastfeeding. That's why I started sharing them. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Okay.
I'm slowly starting to kind of remove certain affiliate links because I feel like a part of me is still kind of holding on to like the crunchy community, and I have like affiliate links to different things, and I'm like praying about them. I'm like, Lord, should I keep these or should I remove them? Because if I'm not going to share anything like about all of that anymore, like why do I need it? I don't know, some sort of security thing that I'm working on the Lord with. But yeah, so that's kind of where you can find me, and I'd love to have you and connect.
Perfect. I will link that. And I am just super thankful for your vulnerability and honesty in a topic that I feel like is super touchy for a lot of people. But I have one more question as we close, as we finish with this with all of our guests. So, if you could provide any wisdom to your younger self or for our community that is listening, what would you share?
I would share that the loudest voice in your head should be the Lord's. It's definitely something that I feel like the Lord has been sharing with me the last year. I've allowed so much of like social media to be like the loudest voice in my head when ultimately it should be the Father's. So that's kind of what I would tell my younger self, because who knows where I'd be if I would have just listened to God instead of social media. So yeah, everything happens for a reason. But yeah, if you find that that social media and like the voices on there are louder than what the Lord is trying to teach you or is sharing with you, then I think maybe it's a time for a detox, which I do pretty often. So yeah.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Arianna, for your time and sharing your time and wisdom and your babies with us. It was so fun.
Yes. Yes, thank you for having me. I loved chatting with you,
Of
and I'm
course.
glad that we got connected on social media.
Definitely. Well, I will definitely share all these things, and I can't wait for this episode, but we will catch you guys soon in the next episode. Thank you for listening, friend. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you don't want to miss any wisdom or encouragement, be sure to subscribe to the show. And don't forget to rate and review. Your feedback means so much and helps our community grow. If you're looking for more wellness wisdom and free resources, head over to livingwiselywell.com or get connected with me on Instagram at wiselywell. And if you're looking for a break from the hurried health lifestyle, check out my Return to Rest resource for tangible ways to slow down and finally find rest.